Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have James Bean, and of course I'm Bruce Bean, so we're trying to figure out if we are related. But James grew up in upstate New York. Our Bean family comes from Maine, so maybe we are related, but we'll see. So James, how did you get from upstate New York on to Ventura, California, and into commercial real estate?
Well, actually, my dad grew up in upstate New York, and then he and my grandparents moved out to Vegas when he was a kid. He actually grew up in Vegas. He was born in Schenectady, but grew up in Vegas, and then went to service and finished his service in Southern California, and that's where he met my mom. So I actually grew up in Southern California, here in Ventura County. The next question, I'm sorry, you asked me.
Okay, so you're in Ventura. So
Yes.
You get through high school, you go into all that wonderful stuff, and you end up enlisting in the Army at 17.
That's correct. Yeah. So I was actually, after I graduated high school, went in the service, and actually did 1 year, my first year of service while I was still in high school. It's called the split option program. I don't remember now why I did it, other than I think it was about getting money for school. And so when I graduated high school, I had to go regular Army. So my first full year active was while I was in high school, and I had 2 more years of active duty while in the Army. And then moved back to California after the service, and was only here for about a year. Yeah, because I got out in '83 and I went back. And I moved to Phoenix in '84. So that's how I got to Phoenix. And from there, I found an art school. And I ended up going to a graphic design trade school and started my graphic design career. And at the end of my career, the school that I had gone to had been bought and was now an accredited school. And I finished up my graphic design career there as an instructor, and was also able to get my associate's degree in visual communication.
Wow.
So I spent almost 15 years as a graphic designer before I got into commercial real estate.
And your buddies, you kind of coerced your way in with your buddies, so to speak.
Yeah, my 2 best friends on the planet had been my best friends for more than 15 years. And they always said I could have a job when I wanted one. And I never thought I would need one. But that day came in early 2000. So I got my license in 2000, started my real estate career there. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
And now you're into the 1031 exchange world.
Right. So I started my career as an industrial broker, doing mostly leasing and sales of user sales. And in 2010, started doing more investment sales, and ultimately was fortunate to learn the 1031 exchange very early in my career because of the people I was working with and the principals of my firm. And in 2014, I was recruited by Marcus and Millichap to open a new office here in Ventura. So it gave me an opportunity to move back home, which I was already looking into doing. And so I moved back here, opened a new office with them. And that's when I was really introduced to the net lease world, which is its own asset class, and started realizing what a great 1031 exchange option that was. And I ended up leaving Marcus Millichap and joining SBN. And in 2018 is when I really started looking at, there really was no one representing exchange buyers. And I joined a networking organization in 2017 known as Provisors, which is a group of professional advisors. It's actually grown. It's national now, more than 11,000 members, but started here in Southern California. And that organization heard me talking about the 1031 exchange, and one of the attorneys came up to me and said, you really need to talk more about 1031 exchange because no one talks about it, and you clearly know what you're talking about. And that led to somebody asking me to do a presentation specifically on the 1031 exchange. And I decided, I'm going to do the top 10 myths of the 1031 exchange. And in that research, I learned two things. Number one, there's more than 48 different myths online. If you go online and you search myths around the 1031 exchange, several articles come up, and I counted more than 48. And I think actually that number has grown because I've just heard of a couple others here recently. So that was the one thing I learned. And the second thing I learned, which when you think about it, the two have a little bit to do with each other. The second thing I learned is that more than 60% of exchanges fail every year. And I thought, wow, that is a big number. More than 60%. That's a stat coming from the FEA, which is the Federation of Exchange Accommodators. And the more research I did, the more I realized that, there's a very underserved niche here, not just for me, but for real estate agents all over the country. Because at the end of the day, the 1031 exchange is a real estate transaction. And if more than 60% are failing, then I think real estate agents have a little bit to do with that. And now, 7 years later, I realized that probably more than 90% of real estate agents out there couldn't tell you much about the 1031 exchange. They know about it, they've heard about it, and if they haven't done one, they know very little about it. And so I launched best1031online.com, the website, in 2020, and Best 1031 Online YouTube channel in October of 24, purely to educate, to be a resource for not only the real estate agents, but for investors as well. And to hopefully get rid of the 48 plus myths that are online and to reduce that failure rate.
Well, so, okay, I'm actually shocked that it's 60% failure right now. I must admit, I know a little bit about 1031 exchange. I'm trying to think I have done a 1031 exchange. Anyway, what are the top items that make a 1031 exchange fail?
Well, the common thread is lack of planning. There are a litany of reasons why they fail, but if you dig deep into each one of those reasons, it's all going to point to the same thing, that there was little to no planning in going into the 1031. So many people, and I tell this, if you're somebody who owns investment real estate property and you're considering selling that investment property to cash out or for whatever reason, the first person you should talk to is a CPA, your CPA. You should go to your CPA and say, look, if I sell this thing, I bought it at $1 million, it's now worth $3 million. There's a $2 million gain there with my depreciation recapture and everything else. What am I looking at? What's my capital tax going to be? The tax I'm going to have to write on the capital gains. And that number is rarely discussed prior to people even putting that property on the market. And that's when it should be. And when they realize that, hey, I don't want to write a $500,000 check. I don't want to lose $500,000 out of my proceeds. Then the next person you should talk to is somebody like me. And unfortunately, there's not many guys that do what I do across the country. In fact, you can count us on one hand. And I'm out to change that.
Wow. Okay. Through education, through your YouTube channel.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are going to help change that today, I hope. So what can we do to try and educate ourselves to bring us up to speed? Obviously, we need to talk to our sellers about planning. That's the number one issue.
Yes. So again, the exchange should really be talked about and mapped out prior to the property they plan to relinquish on the market. Once they know what their tax hit's going to be, then they should say, okay, well, what are our exchange options? And here's actually where many myths come into play. Number one is most of the people that I work with, they're 65 and older, and they've owned their properties for 2 decades or more. And because they've owned the property so long, they're not real active in the market, let alone active in investment language and other opportunities, etc. So they know of the Article 1031, the tax deferred like kind exchange. It's those words like kind that have created many misconceptions and myths. So many of the people that I work with, like for instance, say many of them own multifamily properties, whether it's a triplex, fourplex, or a 10-unit property. They want to sell it. They're done with it, especially with California legislation, rent control. They're done with it and they want to get rid of it. And they know that if they sell it, they know their taxes are going to be significant. But they don't want to exchange because they think they'd have to buy another apartment building, because an apartment building like kind is another apartment building.
Right.
So very common myth, surprisingly common. And the truth is, no, you can exchange into anything. The wording should be investment property for investment property. The 1031
like investment property for investment property.
Yeah, well, the failure rate probably wouldn't be as bad if that alone, if they would have changed the wording on that alone, the failure rate would probably not be so bad. So that's part of it. They need to know their options. The other thing is, a lot of people, because they don't know their options, they don't realize all the different options that are available to them, including many hands-off passive investment opportunities that can not only give them probably better annual income, more really free time, because they're literally hands-off, no responsibility type investment vehicles, which would ultimately just give them a better quality of life. So who doesn't want better quality of life and more income at the same time?
Hello. Yeah. Well, I think the biggest challenge that I have always run into is the famous identification period.
Yes. Again, you have to plan, because, and I can share many stories where I get referred to people while they're in escrow, and people don't realize that, that 45 days goes by really fast. When you hear it, it sounds like, wow, I have 45 days to find a property. When you first hear it, it's like, that should be plenty of time.
No problem.
When it's not. If you already know what you're going to exchange into, so the savvy people that maybe have done 1 or 2 exchanges, or they're in a particular market where their whatever product type that they're looking at is aplenty, then they're like, yeah, I know that I'll be able to find that property. But even I've got stories of people that did identify their properties in the amount of time, and their exchange still failed. So that's why, again, the planning is so key, because when it comes to that 45 days, it's day one is the day after close, and it's 45 days continuous. There have been exchanges that have failed because people thought the 45 days was 45 business days. It's not business days, it's calendar days. And holidays count, everything counts. So it's literally 45 days. So you're looking at, that's what, 5 weeks, 45 days, 6 weeks is 42 days, right? So,
right. Yeah.
6 weeks, but you've only got 30 working days,
right,
or business days in there. So, yeah, if you don't know what you're exchanging into and day one starts, you're already at the bottom of a very tall hill.
So, okay, so the famous identification period, the other, there are numerous other mechanisms you can exchange into, like a Delaware statutory trust, et cetera, et cetera. So, the one thing that I have always been concerned about with these other vehicles. I mean, if you exchange into a triple net lease, okay, you've got a building. If you don't like it, maybe you can decide to sell it, whatever. You can try and get out of it at some point or exchange into something else. So a Delaware statutory trust or some of these other vehicles, you put your money in there and you kind of have to wait and see if you're ever going to get your money back out.
Yes. So in the triple net world, there's actually, it's more referred to as the net lease world because there are multiple types of net leases. There's the double net, the triple net, which in the investment world, a true triple net means that there's responsibility carved out for the landlord. In the lease, there's some carve out where the landlord's responsible. In most cases, the roof, structure, foundation, parking lot. Depends on how that lease is written. In the absolute net lease world, the tenant is 100% responsible for everything. The building, the real estate, the operating expenses, top to bottom. It's literally a hands-off asset for the taxpayer / landlord. And you have complete control. You own the building, you own the land. It's a fee simple purchase. It's just that tenant wants full control of the building. So many people ask me, James, why would a tenant ever sign a lease like that? And the answer is that they want full control of the property, but they don't want to be in the real estate business. And, in the net lease world, we're typically talking of operators that have hundreds, if not thousands of units. And so, when you think about, I'm going to say Dollar General at this point, just because it's a great example. They have more than 20,000 stores, all of which are on some form of a net lease formed document. And if you thought, wow, that 20,000 stores, what that would look like, how that would change their P&L statement and their balance sheets would be significant. Whereas if they're just paying rent's a write-off, and it's just much easier. They're very good at running discount stores. They don't want to be in the restaurant business. So because of that, the net lease, this absolute net lease form exists, and it's actually becoming more and more popular. The true triple net lease is really going away. More and more uses are signing the absolute net lease form. Now, PSCs, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wanted to talk for a minute about, okay, so what is the current market looking like? Excuse me. And what do you think the future is looking like?
In the net lease world?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that it's its own market. It really is its own asset class. When you look at these, people refer to them, they used to be called like a bonded lease. So many people will refer to these as it's like buying a bond backed by real estate. So what is changing is lease terms are actually becoming shorter. It used to be that you could find a 15, 20, 25-year lease pretty easy, where now they're more like 10 years and 15 years, which is unfortunate because term is king in the net lease world. That's how they're traded. These properties they're not priced based on their real estate. They're priced on the income. They're priced on the lease and the strength of the lease. So going back to the Dollar General example, when you have a guaranteed 15-year lease guaranteed by a corporation that is backed by 20,000 stores, it's a pretty strong guarantee.
Yeah.
So now to say that, there's many net lease products or net lease opportunities out there where they're mom and pop operators, they might have been in the building for a long time, but there's really not much strength behind it. The other thing is that when you're talking about the long-term lease, so again, with the people that I work with that are 65 and older, I pretty much concentrate on newer construction buildings that are less than 10 years old with operators that are 100 unit operators or greater than. And my use of choice is the fast food restaurants, also known as QSRs, quick service restaurants. And the reason for that is because they're really the only use now that will sign a 20-year term.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Wow. All right. Well, so things are changing out there.
Yeah, and right now the current market is about 6% cap rate, and a lot of that has to do with where the cost of money is. When the rates will drop, so the cap rates will drop a little bit. So when rates go up, cap rates go up. So that's kind of how that works. Right now, though, the net lease market as a whole probably is in the 5.5–6% range.
Mm.
So if somebody's got $1 million change and that's $60,000 a year of hands-free money or mailbox money, as we call it.
Right. Coupon clipper.
Yeah, we really don't call them that anymore, but you just
okay.
kind of aged yourself there.
Right.
Yeah, so getting to the DSTs. So the Delaware Statutory Trust. It's looks, smells, feels, and tastes like a REIT, but it's not a REIT. They have their own rules. They've been allowed by the IRS to be an exchange option for about 20 years now, a little more than 20 years. I think it was 2004 when they allowed them. And the reason why they allow them is because of how they're structured. So the trusts are structured in Delaware because of Delaware's trust and estate laws and their corporation laws. That's why you see a lot of corporations that they don't belong to Delaware, but they're backed by a Delaware LLC. They just have really great law around how their legal entities are structured. So that's where the trusts are structured. And the trust is structured in a way where the sponsor will go find an asset or a portfolio of assets, buy it, and then sell it to the trust. So there's usually a spread there. You will never hear a DST sponsor talk about that because they would have to disclose that if you're investing in a DST, you're investing in a secondary market. Because they went and found a student housing portfolio for $50 million, but sold it to the trust for $55 million. So now they go and do a capital raise for $55 million. They get that. And they'll put debt on it. I mean, they buy it in the traditional real estate investment fashion by leveraging the money. And it's usually a value add type situation where they're going to turn over the units or add some other profit centers, whatever it might be. And the reason why they do that is because they'll put 10-year money on it, but the way it's structured and the rules say that they are not allowed to refinance. So as soon as that debt expires, they have to sell it. Well, they have to sell it before the debt expires. So a typical hold period of a DST is 7 to 9 years. So to your point that you made earlier is that, you put your money in there and you have no control, no say, you cannot sell out of it, you cannot trade out of it. It's there. And the good news about it is that typically they're very safe. However, I was going to say, although there are some people that have lost everything because of what would have been, 10 more years ago, because they trade every 10 years, but the Class A office market was a very popular DST market, which there have been people that have lost everything because many Class A assets have been handed back to the bank due to what COVID did and, the workplace where we are with the workplace now, the hybrid workplace, et cetera. But there are many different types that you can get into. You can get into self-storage or multifamily or assisted living or student living or a number of healthcare uses or even retail. There's DSTs, they buy grocery anchored retail or the net leased type assets. So you have that, and there's most of them, the fees can be on the expensive side and the returns aren't that great, but that's what a safe investment looks like. So they're super safe. The other thing about a DST that I do like about them is that if you have to replace debt within your exchange, then you don't have to go get a loan. You can actually find a DST that'll absorb your debt, and that makes that transaction much easier.
Wait, say that again. If you have debt in your transaction.
Right. So if you have, let's say you bought a 10-unit apartment complex 15 years ago for $2 million.
Yeah. Okay.
You put down $1 million and you borrowed $1 million.
Yeah.
You put $1 million, you put $1 million in debt on it. So now 15 years later, you've refinanced it, whatever. So let's just say there's still $300,000 in debt on it.
Oh, I see. You can pull that debt into the DST.
No, what happens when you sell that?
Yeah.
The loan gets paid off.
Okay.
But the 1031 rules, you have to replace the debt. Whatever debt is on the asset that you relinquish, you have to replace that debt. The first rule of the 1031 exchange is equal to or greater than the sale price of the relinquished property.
Oh, right.
You sell for $2 million, you have to place $2 million. Well, if you had $300,000 in debt, you've only got $1.7 million. So that debt has to be replaced. It doesn't mean you have to go get a new loan. You can come out of pocket. You can sell some stock. You can move things around. Take cash. As long as that $300,000 is replaced, it doesn't matter. So if you do a DST, you only got the 1.7, but when you'll tell the sponsor, look, I need to replace $2 million. So they'll give you a $2 million position with 300,000 of that being a debt position.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I was not familiar with that part of it. That's very interesting.
It makes it very convenient.
Yeah.
Especially for people that have a real low debt amount. Like I'll get clients where they only have to replace $75,000 in debt on $1 million property. Well, if they try to go get a loan for that, that's going to be punitive.
Yeah. Not easy. All right. Well, we could talk, I think, for another couple days, but let's hold it for now. I want to come back maybe in 6 months and continue this conversation, see if the market's changed at all in 6 months. So, Jay, you go by Jay instead of James?
James. That's what I'm
calling. All right. So, James,
Broker James. I'm at 1031 Broker James on all of your social channels.
All right. So, James Bean. It's Bruce Bean signing out for the moment. We're going to come back and talk in 6 months. This was a very interesting and educational podcast, I must say. So we will look forward to that, and we'll sign off for the moment.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for being here. We'll talk again soon.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.